the nuclear reactor has to be abandoned after about half a century. Did you know that?
No.
There's about 800 nuclear reactor sites on Earth. 300 have been abandoned because they're too radioactive. Can get rid of the waste safely, but we don't.
Well, Kelsey and I were talking on a previous podcast about Will Shackle and his passion for Australia going nuclear. And then Kelsey said to me, have you heard of thorium? And I said, what? And she said, well, she's done some research, you see. And thorium is a radioactive silver-white antinide metal with atomic number 90. I said, of course it is.
No, you didn't. You had no idea.
And apparently it was discovered in 1828, and it was named after the Norse god of thunder, Thor, the bloke with the hammer and the cape. And according to Google, it's about 3 times more abundant than uranium in the Earth's crust. It is highly valued as a potential virtually limitless nuclear energy source, according to Wikipedia. And we thought, why don't we learn more about it? And we both said, Dr. Karl, who is the author of many, many books, including this one, The Periodic Tale, which is a great, great read. And look, there's a picture of him on the back. Look at that.
Aww.
But he's not wearing a Hawaiian shirt there, which is a shame. But he's holding a camera. And look at those shorts. Geez, you reckon you can get them any daggier than that? We used to wear them to school. But there it is, Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki, who has a lot to offer on so many topics. He joins us on the Bonafide podcast. Again, it's been too long, Dr. Karl. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. I've been flat out like a lizard drinking, and thank you for inviting me back. And they were rather disarmingly high pants, but I took it to the next level of actually tucking the jumper into the pants. You don't see a lot of that nowadays.
Oh, it is. It's tucked in high pants, Dr. Karl.
That's me.
Oh, you look so cute.
And little round glasses, yeah.
When did the Hawaiian shirts come into your wardrobe?
So they're not Hawaiian shirts, they're bright shirts, which is the difference. Hawaiian shirts are normally short-sleeved and synthetic. Mine are long-sleeved and natural fibres. And I was in Wollongong on a Saturday morning, and it was rainy. And everybody was sort of slightly depressed and not smiling. And then I started seeing people half smiling. And then as I went through the crowd, suddenly I came across this woman who was dressed in bright clothing. And I stood back and then just observed for a while. And as people walked past her, their spirits seemed to lift a little bit and their faces turned from the frown into the smile, just a tiny amount. And I thought, isn't that interesting? What a strange behaviour these human animals are doing. I thought, isn't it wonderful that you can lighten your spirit by wearing colours other than grey? And so since then I started wearing bright shirts, started off in Hawaiian shirts, and I was very lucky to marry Mary, have babies, and along the way, for the last 30 years, she's been making these shirts. This one here...
She makes them. It's a handmade shirt.
Yeah, all my shirts have been handmade for the last 30 years to the same pattern. And this one here is some sort of blobby sea animal. It might be a manatee or a dugong. Could be a walrus. Could be a walrus.
I love that.
A dugong. It could be a dugong.
Yes, probably a manatee.
Yeah, so that's why I'm wearing these bright shirts, to lighten up the spirits of the world around me. And then on the other side of the coin, we've just bought a car which is in... Have you heard of the phrase, the German rainbow?
No. Never.
Combi van.
The German rainbow has 3 colours. This is the colours that their cars come in. White, black and grey. Right? And so we've bought a...
monochromatic.
Yeah, so we've finally bought a secondhand electric vehicle, and we're talking about nuclear power here, and we'll get onto that. So what we've got is a combination of solar cells that give us enough electricity, plus a fairly low power energy drain each day, so we can get in winter between 5 and 30 kilowatt hours a day. We use between 8 and 25, and we've got a 50 kilowatt hour battery. And the sum of it is that for the last month and a half, we've bought no electricity from the grid, and we've run our car entirely on sunlight that we store in the battery, and when we've got too much, we chuck it into the car, and we've got too much, then we sell it back to the grid. So here we are, not needing any electricity from coal or nuclear power.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and also buying a second-hand one, we picked one that gave us a range of 612 kilometres. So in this particular model, there were 3 models available, and we went for the poverty pack without all of the glossy fruit and whistles and everything. Yeah, but it had the advantage of having one electric motor instead of 2. And if you had the next ones up, you had 2 electric motors, 512 kilometre range. We've got 612, so we can go Sydney to Newcastle and back again and still have enough left for another trip to Newcastle and a little bit left over as well.
And it runs off solar panels.
So, yes. So
What do you do if you have, say, 30 days of no sun or cloud and gloom? What happens then?
In that case, we'll have to go and buy electricity from the grid. But we use 5 kilowatt hours a day. So the lowest we generate in winter is 5 kilowatt hours when it's just raining all day, and we're using about 8. And we've got a background current energy drain of about 400 watts. So just to put that into perspective, a light bulb, say 5 to 15 watts, an oven 2,500 watts, a dryer 2,500, a car say 200,000 watts, so 200 kilowatts. And so I'm gradually bringing that vampire drain down as I look at different things running all the time. We do have a minimum of about 40 watts to turn the internet into Wi-Fi and run it through the whole house. So that's running all the time. And the fridge, that's about 100 watts and that kicks in and out. And I hope to get it down from about 400 watts minimum to about 150 watts. And then we'd be able to survive, just sort of scrape through.
Can I ask you a question about solar panel? Because we've got panels on the roof. And Kelsey's mum, Nikki, the Minister for War and Finance, she loves buying solar lights for the garden from Bunnings. And we've got these lights on our back fence and they get the northwestern sun all day.
Yeah.
And these lights go on when it gets dark. And when I get up until the sun comes up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, whatever, they're still going all night. And they look great, but they're fading now in winter. They still go on, but they're fading. So do solar panels rely on heat or sunshine? Because they're getting sunshine all day, but they're not going as long during winter. So is it the intensity of the light or intensity of heat or a bit of both? How does it work?
Man, you have the insight to go straight to the core of the difficult point. So the sun, when it's directly above you,
yes,
which is somewhere between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn or the equator, when it's directly above you, is throwing a kilowatt of power, 1,000 watts, onto each square metre. And then as you get further around the curve of the Earth, it gets less and less, right? In fact, I've been up at Longyearbyen, inside the Arctic Circle, and their solar panels are mounted vertically, because the sun just comes up, stays above the horizon a tiny amount, then goes down. So you just aim them directly where the sun is. Okay, wow. Moving right along. So of that 1 kilowatt, so here in, say, Sydney, 34 degrees from the equator, we're getting maybe 80% of that. A little bit over half is heat. A little bit under half is visible light, the stuff that our eyes can see, ranging from red all the way up to violet. And about 2% gives you cancer. That's ultraviolet. So here's the answer. The current generation of cells run entirely off heat. Do you remember the periodic table from the old days in chemistry at school?
No.
No? It's a list of all of the elements. And practically everything on the left-hand side is metals. And over on the right-hand side, there's a little bit that's non-metals, like argon and carbon and stuff. And then in between, there's a little ladder with things like silicon and germanium, and they're the semiconductors, and they're what we're using at the moment to capture the heat part of the sunlight and turn it into electricity. But one of my colleagues at the University of Sydney is working with chemicals called perovskites, Perovskits, and they can capture the energy from the visible light. And you stack them on top of each other, and then you can double the amount of energy you get with the next generation of solar cells.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So it is light.
So
plus heat. At
the moment, the current generation of cells turn heat into electricity. But the next generation,
if you put a solar panel in front of like a gas heater, would it get power?
Yeah, it'll be radiating power. So it runs off the heat. Yeah. Right, but the next generation will run. No. Okay,
Kelsey,
okay.
No.
No. This is very important.
Sorry, Dr. Karl, she's hopeless.
No, she's not hopeless. Boo the patriarchy. You've asked also once again. You've asked a very insightful question. And most people are confused Kelsey. About it.
You're just a suck up to the teacher, Kelsey. Why don't you bring him an apple?
Apples are nice, but separately. Now, heat is energy, not power. I'm going to explain the difference. Even the Minister for Energy gets it wrong. Okay, so let me take you through it. Having lived in our society, you know the difference between speed and distance.
Yes.
So distance is a certain amount of stuff, like how many meters you have to go, and speed or velocity is how fast you consume it.
Yes.
They're two different things, aren't they? So if you're walking to the coffee shop, you're not walking a distance of 5 kilometers an hour. No. You're covering a distance of 300 meters, but you're traveling, your speed is 5 kilometers an hour. You don't say the speed at which I'm walking is 100 meters.
Yes.
It's the wrong unit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so speed and distance are two different things, but they're related because one is how fast you use up the other. So speed is how fast you cover distance, right?
Yes.
Okay, just think about that for a minute. So if you're doing 5 kilometres an hour, in 1 hour you'll do 5 kilometres. So you'll cover, So speed is how fast you consume distance. You got that?
Yes.
Power is how fast you consume or generate energy. Now, let's just stop there. This is a hard one because you haven't grown up with it all your life. And it will take a while to soak in. Many people, including ministers for energy around the world, get it wrong. Mm-hmm. So my solar panels, they can throw electrons into my battery at a rate or a speed or a power of 8.8 kilowatts. Mm-hmm. That's maximum, when everything is perfect and the sun's exactly square onto them. But in a day, in winter, they'll generate energy, which is like distance. Energy is stuff. And they'll generate between 5 and 30. Now, here come the units. Power is measured in kilowatts and energy is measured in kilowatt hours. This is hard, but imagine that you're a 3-year-old kid, right? So, by the way, have you heard about the Robbie, not Middleton, but anyway, he was the guy who jumped the Arc de Triomphe, an Australian guy. Can you imagine jumping?
Yeah.
So there's two Robbies, Robbie Adelberg and Robbie, it's not Middleton, his name will come to me in a minute, but I met him last weekend, he's an amazing guy. But anyway, guess at what age, these two Robbies who kind of invented, the forward, flip, backward, okay. Guess what age they started riding motorbikes?
I'm going to say later on in life because...
Pick a number.
35.
Okay, Luke, what age do you think they started riding motorbikes?
4.
3. So...
do I win that? Do I win that one?
Yeah, you win.
So each of them said, Santa brought me a motorbike. These are the two, like they're like the Evel Knievels of our age. They're the top motocross stunt people in the world, right? Here's the weird thing. They said that Santa brought them a motorbike. So these kids are driving around on their parents' property on a motorbike using physics, and they still believe in Santa and the Tooth Fairy. Isn't that weird? They did not know about energy and speed and distance and velocity. They picked it up. Pretty soon they learned that they were travelling at 10 kilometres an hour and they were covering a distance of a couple of kilometres, and you're at that early stage. Getting back to our solar panels, we make enough energy and store it in the batteries during winter to run both our house and our car, and we save so much money. Like
Robbie Madison.
Madison, oh man, he is the god. Okay,
Robbie Madison, New Year's Eve 2008, launched his motorcycle, 96 feet. Yep, sorry.
Okay, so on one hand, we can run our house entirely off solar. Now, the problem with nuclear, there's a few of them. Firstly, the nuclear reactor has to be abandoned after about half a century. Did you know that?
No.
You didn't know that? Okay.
What do you mean abandoned?
It's too radioactive to work in.
Surely we've solved that problem by now.
No. There's about 800 nuclear reactor sites on Earth. 300 have been abandoned because they're too radioactive, and they're going to stay dangerously radioactive for 250,000 years, and we can get rid of the waste safely, but we don't. Instead, because it's too expensive. The way to get rid of nuclear waste is very simple but very expensive.
Is that when you put it in the cement tombs?
Yeah, underground.
Yeah.
A long way underground, unstable. So you go to somewhere geologically stable that's going to stay stable for 1 million years, and because it's already been there for 1 million years, right? And you go down, you build a tunnel 15 metres in diameter, and you go down a kilometre. That is shirtloads expensive. Then, when you're at the bottom, you build a bunch of tunnels going out in all directions, radially, like the spokes of a bicycle wheel, and you put your nuclear waste in there. You then backfill it with a bit of concrete, come up 10 metres, and then do the same thing again with the tunnels in between the other tunnels.
Yeah.
And you keep on doing that until you get half a kilometre from the surface, and then you fill it up with a plug of concrete 15 metres wide, half a kilometre long, and it's safe. Nobody's going to touch that for the next 250,000 years. But it's cheaper to put a barbed wire fence around it and say don't go in because it's dangerous. So nuclear reactors have to be abandoned after about 50 years because they become dangerously radioactive.
Well, we need to talk to Will Shackle. We should have had Will Shackle on with you.
Will said that he went into a nuclear waste thingamajiggy where they had concrete tombs filled with nuclear waste, and he hugged it. And he was it's not radioactive.
Oh.
So will it stay like that, or will it not stay
I think
like
you're
that?
talking about the reactor, not the waste.
No. It was nuclear waste. He said that he hugged one of the cement tombs that they kept the nuclear waste in, and it was above ground and the same radioactivity as the sun.
Yeah, but the point is that that's really expensive.
The cement tomb?
Concrete is expensive. And
Is it? I thought it was cheap.
You need a lot of it. And so to rehabilitate totally, to bring back to Virgin one of the first nuclear reactor sites on Earth, the ones up in the top left-hand corner of the USA in Washington State, to bring that ground back to like it was before is 2% of the world's GDP. And you only get 50 years out of them. And the other thing is, the electricity out of them is about 3 to 4 times more expensive than the electricity from renewables.
So this brings me back
to
the
thorium.
original question.
Thorium.
Which was, why don't we do thorium reactors? Assume that the governments were like, yay, thorium, we're going to invest in it. Is it actually a good idea?
No, because you still end up with a nuclear reactor that is dangerously radioactive after 50 years, and you have to abandon it for the next 250,000 years.
But doesn't thorium like need an extra chemical like potassium to actually make it reactive?
Let me take you through it.
If you take that away, doesn't the chain reaction, like it's not, thorium doesn't cause a chain reaction like uranium does because it needs an extra boost essentially from potassium to make it active.
Yeah, kind of.
So if you take away that, isn't it fine?
Yes and no.
Oh.
Let me take you through it. So this was explained to you by Will Lockett?
No. I just never heard of thorium before, and so I went down a bit of a rabbit hole.
Okay, so firstly we need to know what atoms are. Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so just for those who've forgotten about atoms, everything is made of atoms. They look like a mini solar system.
Yeah.
In our solar system, we've got the sun, a heavy lumpy thing in the middle, and then empty space. So in an atom, you've got a heavy lumpy thing. We call it the nucleus, and then empty space. And then in the solar system, we've got planets orbiting at different distances. And in an atom, we've got electrons kind of orbiting at different distances. So it's kind of similar, but much, much, much smaller. And the electrons, you can have several of them in the same orbit. Okay, whereas in the solar system, you only get one planet per orbit. Okay, so most of the atoms are stable. They'll just stay there until the end of the universe, and they will not break down. But some of them are radioactive, and they will break down. So remember that heavy lumpy thing in the middle, the nucleus, which is like the sun?
Yeah.
Once you get into some of the slightly heavier atoms, and even some of the light atoms, they've got too many neutrons, and they're wobbling around like jelly on a plate. And every now and then, the core of the atom will split and turn into two other atoms.
Like a cell in your body.
Yeah, your cells grow and get bigger and divide. And so in the case of uranium, it will split.
Is that fission?
It's called fission, exactly correct.
Yes.
And you'll make two lighter atoms. Now, there's a whole bunch of different varieties of uranium, and only one of them goes bang. Or two of them, one of them naturally found goes bang. We're talking about now uranium-235. You heard about uranium-235?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look at the bunch of uranium atoms we have now, just naturally in the world around us, 99.3% of the atoms, of uranium atoms, if you get just a blob of uranium, and it's just nothing but uranium, out of every 1,000 atoms, 993 are uranium-328. They don't go bang. But uranium-235, which is only 7 atoms out of that 1,000, it will go bang. And so enriched uranium is when you lift it from 0.7% to 20% in a nuclear reactor, up to about 99% in a nuclear bomb. And by the way, it's really hard to go from 0.7 to 20%, but once you're at 20%, it's relatively easy to go to 99%.
And what part does uranium play in all of this then? Why do we need uranium to... Sorry?
You're exactly correct. Why am I talking about uranium? Because a thorium reactor manufactures and burns uranium. Isn't that weird? Right. Okay, let me run you through it. So thorium also is a radioactive element, and it will break down, but it won't sustain a nuclear reaction. It won't go bang. So uranium-238, it splits and it gives off 1 or 2 neutrons and they sort of vanish into the environment and you get nothing. But with uranium-235, you get about 3 neutrons. And so you've got 1 atom of uranium-235 and it's surrounded by other atoms of uranium-235. And so this atom splits and gives off 3 neutrons. And then around it, 3 atoms of uranium-235, they each absorb 1 of those neutrons. And they give off 3. And now you've got a chain reaction. 1, 3, 27, and it just goes off by itself. Uranium-235 is fissile. In other words, it will sustain a nuclear reaction, whereas uranium-238 is not. Now we'll talk about thorium. Thorium will not sustain a nuclear reaction. But if you start throwing neutrons at it, so remember that heavy lumpy thing in the middle of the atom? It's got protons and neutrons. P for proton, P for positive, N for neutron, N for neutral. So the thorium-232, so that's the total number of particles inside that nucleus. That's the total number of protons and neutrons. And then you throw a neutron at it, and it turns into one higher. It goes from 232 to 233. And then it loses a proton and turns into proactinium-233, and it turns into uranium-233. The whole purpose of the thorium is to give you a variety of uranium-233, which will go bang. So it's not present naturally in the environment because it's all decayed because the universe is quite old, but you make uranium. You use the thorium to make uranium, and then you have the nuclear reactor going.
So isn't that good, though? Because, okay, yes, you make uranium, but, like, not as... Okay, what is the waste from a thorium reactor?
Okay. The waste is... Oh, by the way, you know when you talk about nuclear waste...
Yeah.
Guess how much energy is still left in it? Luke? Pick a percentage.
16.
Kelsey?
No idea.
Have a guess. They call it waste after all.
2.
You've already
0.7.
95. It's incredibly wasteful. 95% of the energy is still left there in what they call the waste. It's
so
like
we just can't make energy from it anymore.
We can, but then you have to go through the process by which you can make nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
That was done in some of the Middle East countries where they kind of illegally got hold of extra amounts of uranium and they built one nuclear reactor above ground for the world to inspect and another one underground.
A sneaky one.
And so that's how come some of the Middle Eastern countries have got nuclear weapons. So the good thing about when you're burning thorium, you've got slightly less uranium-type products and plutonium, and the waste is significantly less radioactive. That's a good thing about the thorium nuclear reactor, and it doesn't last as long. The way that you work with it is a specific variety of the thorium reactor called a molten salt reactor. Now, what happens with uranium, if you're just starting off with the rods of uranium-235, is you've got these rods of uranium-235, and if you bring them too close to each other, they can start to do bad things. So you have them a little bit apart, and you just sort of tickle it so they're generating enough heat to boil water, and then you've got yourself a turbine. So the water expands in volume by 1,700 times, and then turns the blades of a turbine, and then those blades of the turbine, they then generate electricity. Right. So what you do is you get the thorium and then you dissolve it in salt and you heat it up to a temperature of around 600 to 700 degrees. The salt is now liquid, and then you have a freeze plug. And so at the bottom, you've got a plug of salt like sodium chloride, but you've got a fan on it, an electric fan. And the fan gets its electricity from the nuclear reactor. As soon as the nuclear reactor begins to go bad and stop making electricity and go into a different mode, like I might want to try and go bang, the fan stops. The plug melts and all of the liquid drains out in different directions and it cannot go bang or even go bad like Fukushima or Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island. So if you go down that particular pathway, the heat just vanishes because you don't need the operator to do anything. You just need gravity, and gravity always works. So why aren't we using them everywhere? Well, the United States actually had one in the 1960s, an experimental molten salt thorium reactor at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. But there's a lot of technology that you have to invent from scratch. And if you've ever built something, you know that the first one's not quite right and then the second one's better. And you have
Like
to
children. Like children, yeah. As I said, your first pancake is always a...
Yeah. The thing was that they'd gone down a pathway of uranium reactors were already, there's the technology that we were using, and we'd worked out the bugs, and we knew how to regulate them, and the governments were investing in them. And they did have the advantage that if you purified the waste, you could make nuclear weapons. And so we've got nuclear weapons. Did you know that South Africa was involved in making nuclear weapons?
Nope.
South Africa, Israel, Pakistan, India, North Korea.
Wow.
They all kind of subverted the guidelines and made nuclear weapons. Okay, right?
Classic.
Yeah, so to summarise, in the thorium reactor, it uses thorium to make uranium-233, which will go bang because it gives off lots of neutrons. There's none around at the moment because it's all decayed. It's got a short half-life, and then it makes electricity. But the trouble is that it's about 5 times the price or 3 times the price of electricity from renewables and batteries. You only get 50 years out of it, and then to clean it up, a big site like the first one at Hartford in Washington State is about 2% of the world's GDP.
So it's not cost effective.
Dr. Karl, then. Dr. Karl. So the uranium nuclear advocates, they say that in the long run, yes, it's an expensive investment upfront, right?
Yep.
But in the long run, because renewable technology does break down. So their argument is that, yes, it's an expensive investment upfront, but it will provide energy long term. What's compared to renewables? Like renewables
You mean for 50 years until you see what happens is you're giving off
no one's ever said that before.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of the 50-year thing.
No, wait a second. Because in Chernobyl, obviously that one reactor...
It spewed out nuclear stuff everywhere.
There were other reactors there that they continued to...
Because it's not 50 years old yet.
Is it not?
No. Once you get to about 50 to 70 years, you have to abandon it. So you remember in the middle of the atom... So an atom has protons and neutrons in the middle, like the sun in a solar system.
Yeah.
And the number of protons tells you what the element is. If it's got 1 proton, it's hydrogen. If it's got 2 protons, it's helium. And then you can chuck in extra neutrons. Yeah. So in hydrogen, you can have 0 neutrons or 1 or 2. And I think in copper, you can have like 30 different, 20 or so different extra neutrons, which give you different isotopes. And some of them are radioactive. So when these neutrons get released, they land in another atom, and occasionally they land in the nucleus. They change the atom into something else. So remember how you're generating steam? Mm-hmm. And the steam travels through steel pipes, which are made of iron. Yeah. Suddenly it's not iron anymore, it's another element. It's both radioactive and a different element, and suddenly but over a period of time, the stainless steel pipes begin to leak. So stainless steel, mostly iron, but typically there's thousands of stainless steels, but typically 18% chrome, 8% nickel. And all those elements change, and so firstly they become radioactive, but secondly they leak.
Okay, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Okay, then Kelsey.
Because no one's been able to answer me this. Let's say you got a city the size of Sydney, 5.64 million. If Sydney was to be run completely by nuclear energy for 12 months, over 12 months of powering a city the size of 5.5 million people. How much waste does that generate?
Don't know.
You got a concrete tank. Would it be an Olympic swimming pool? Would it be 4? Would it be?
The thing is that it's not just the radioactive waste, but the actual building itself is radioactive. So it's not the uranium waste being the only thing that's radioactive. The actual stainless steel pipes are radioactive. The whole building becomes radioactive. You have to abandon it. There's different degrees of radioactivity, low and high. We have abandoned around 300 nuclear reactor sites. And so we've got 500 still running and 300 that have been abandoned with a bit of barbed wire around them saying don't go in for the next 250,000 years because it's too expensive to get rid of the waste cheaply.
You have to replace the barbed wire at some point.
What are the odds, though? Because 50 years, 50, 60, whatever the number is.
Yeah, 50 to 70, yeah.
50 to 70 years, that's a long time for humanity to make some type of progress towards nuclear waste, reinforcing the pipes, better safety procedures, better maintenance of nuclear reactors. What's to say that we build a reactor now, and in 50 years' time, we've actually developed better
Technology.
safety procedures, technology, so then we actually can keep the reactor going for longer. Like, what is isn't it?
Scientific progress. It happens.
Yeah.
But basic physics is against you. It's like saying gravity sucks, and so if I step off a step, I fall down one step. But in 50 years, we'll work out a way that I'll levitate up.
Yeah. Do we have that much faith in
Physics is
humanity?
against you on that, in that the site has to be abandoned because you're generating neutrons. If you're making electricity, you're doing that via breaking down the atoms. And when the atoms break down, they give off neutrons. And the neutrons make non-radioactive elements radioactive. Gradually, the building becomes radioactive. It takes about half a century to do this. With the solar panels, with wind. Remember back in the early, I think it was 90s, that Denmark started doing wind turbines at sea?
Yeah.
The blades have just been certified for another 30 years.
Yeah.
So they're going to get 60 years out of these wind turbines. And with a wind turbine, the amount of energy that it costs to make it, you get back in 6 months of running it.
But if the wind stops, they stop working.
Then you have a whole bunch of them around the country and batteries.
Yeah. You can
No
have
one
them-
wants to live near
It's
them.
not, it's
no
not
one,
like the whole world stops producing wind.
no one wants to live near them, though.
Hang on, say that again.
That's why they're out at sea, Luke.
But people don't want to live near wind farms.
Really?
I know plenty of people who don't want them. When I lived in Canberra, there were wind farms there, and every farmer complained.
Because?
A drone, a noise.
Right. And if you have them a bit further away?
Where?
Just over the hill, then you don't hear them.
It'll be on someone else's hill.
No, because I have been, a mate of mine's been installing wind turbines on the Great Dividing Range, and you get around the corner and you can't hear anything. Have you actually been there to listen to them when they're running?
Yeah, I couldn't hear it, but I did go out to a farm.
Say that again. You went there to listen to them and you couldn't hear anything.
No, but maybe it wasn't windy that day. But there was a.
So what happens is that...
I'm telling you, I went out there to have a listen and I couldn't hear anything. But they said
so you couldn't hear anything?
No, but they reckon that even when you can't hear it, there's a subsonic drone that puts the cows and the chickens off.
And if they complain enough, they'll get money. I walked
called
across
compensation.
Spain in
It's called
2009 on the El Camino, and all the way along, in some parts, not all the way, in some parts there were wind turbines, and you come over a hill and you say, oh, there's a wind turbine, and then you talk to the locals, and they accepted it not as a way, if they complained, to get money out of the government, but rather as part of our package to get electricity for the future. Okay, now here's another question for you.
But then the animal activists got upset because a couple of these things hit rare eagles.
Which is the main killers of birds on the world at the moment? Cats. Do you know how many
cats?
Do you know how many
That's true.
cats? How many birds are killed by cats each day in Australia?
So many.
1 million, right?
1 million?
Yeah. The wind turbines, they've worked out ways to reduce the deaths. Okay, talk about coal. Do you know that coal waste is radioactive?
No, I didn't actually.
No. Hundreds of tons of radioactive elements are being dumped into the environment each year in the waste of nuclear reactors. There is more radioactivity in the coal ash from a power plant than your regular type of nuclear waste.
Really?
How?
Well, it turns out that when you're burning coal, you're also burning other stuff as well. So besides carbon, and it's mostly carbon, you're also getting 73 different elements, and on average, coal has 1.3 parts per million of uranium and 3.2 parts per million of thorium, and your average 1 megawatt coal-fired power plant burns 4 million tonnes of coal, which contains 5.2 tonnes of uranium and 12.8 tonnes of radioactive thorium. And then that turns into waste. So
Where did that go?
we just sort of throw it around Australia because it's just cold waste and it's easier to put into the environment is worth nothing. So on average, Kelsey, you and I and Luke in Australia at the moment, we are married to 0.5 tonne of coal waste a year.
How many shoe boxes is that?
Well, say a car weighs 2 tonnes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, I've got it.
Okay. And so there's an article here, let me just find it here. Coal ash is more radioactive than nuclear waste from the Scientific American, December 13, 2007. So coal is dumping, by burning coal, we're dumping huge amounts of uranium in the environment. More.
So why aren't coal power stations radioactive then?
Oh, the waste goes somewhere else, and it's very diluted. But there's 0.5 tonne of it. And so each person at the moment generates about a paddle pop, of pure uranium each year from coal plants. In a nuclear power plant, you got the radium all concentrated, so it's up to around 20%, whereas when you're looking at, like 1 part per million, that's way, way, way less than a percent. It's like 1,000th of a percent.
Do you reckon, do coal plant workers get cancer?
They do get cancer from other reasons. So from the bad air.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's higher than the cancers that they're getting from the coal waste. They don't see it directly.
Yeah.
It's separated from them by a bit of a distance. In Australia, we generate around 12 to 15 million tonnes of coal ash each year. And that ash has uranium in it and thorium. And we just dump it somewhere.
So can you see ever a world in which Australia invests in both nuclear and renewables? Like, can you, and just forget about policymakers and all that type of stuff. From a purely scientific perspective and, the energy needs of a growing population, would it ever make sense to build a nuclear reactor and renewables? Like,
Could they work? Could we have both?
Not for Australia, but there would be certain landlocked countries that are small in size but high in population. We're the opposite, with unfriendly neighbours who won't sell them electricity and they don't have natural resources like lots of sunlight or lots of wind or water. There are a few countries where to make their own electricity, nuclear reactors would work for them.
Right,
but
okay.
on the other hand, what if they're just friendly with their neighbours and they buy the electricity from them?
If they've got friendly neighbours.
If they've got friendly neighbours. And there are some neighbours that are friendly and some that are not. But definitely not for Australia, because we just have so abundant wind and solar, and the cost of batteries is just plummeting like crazy. Now, here's another concept. What about, you say, if you not lucky enough to live in a house where you can park your car nearby, and the answer to that is one word: fungible. Fungible is a fancy word meaning identical. So a banknote is fungible. It doesn't matter if you have this $50 banknote or that one, they both do the same job. They're functionally identical.
Fungible, that's our word for the day. Fungible.
Okay, so it wasn't always so. So in the United States, before they introduced the greenback $1 bill, every state and every town made its own banknotes. And so bartenders in New York would have a book about the size of an old-fashioned telephone book. And you'd walk into a bar carrying a banknote, say, from West Virginia, 100 kilometres away. And they'd look up at the book and they'd say, oh, that banknote issued by this bank is worth 1.5 or half a New York dollar. And even in New York, there were different dollars made by different banks. And so we went to a single currency for the USA, and other countries in the world did the same thing, right? Electrons are fungible. One electron is identical to another. So suppose, I'm just going to put forward a world to you. Suppose we have a world where the government puts up solar panels on agricultural land, and having a balance of them actually makes things, if you pick the right area, better. And you, as a person who lives in a flat, you can buy or rent 5 kilowatts, 20 kilowatts of solar panels. And those electrons go into the grid, and they are married to you. They've got once they go into the grid, you get a credit. Okay, and then look at the other side of the coin. Suppose that everywhere you park a car in a city in Australia, there's a charging station. That'll cost about $2,000. It's a two-way thing, vehicle to grid, where the car battery can be charged from the grid, but can also feed back into the grid. That's coming in now. We had it before with the Nissan Leaf, but that didn't kind of work for various reasons. But now Hyundai offering the Ioniq 9 as vehicle to grid. So suddenly you have a car and that battery can talk to the grid both ways. And so everywhere you park a car, there's a charging station, and that would cost around $2,000. So for 20 million cars in Australia, that would cost roughly, $40 billion, which, that'd be perhaps covered by the tax that the fossil fuel companies don't pay, $40 billion, right?
Yeah, but Kelsey lives in an apartment. She doesn't have a garage, and she's not guaranteed a parking space anywhere near her apartment. It's luck. So what if she's got to park 200 metres down the road and there's no station, no charging station?
Okay, how about this, that everywhere you park a car, we build a charging meter. There's 20 million of them.
Yeah.
right? 20 million cars in Australia, and each one costs $2,000. You do it at scale. So that's $40 billion that everywhere you park a car, it can put electrons into the system and take them back. And electrons are fungible. And so you don't have to have it married to your house by cables. It's just wherever you park a car, you can put electricity into the grid or take it back and get paid for it or pay for it. Now,
I like it.
Now this unfortunately involves government planning for the future.
I know.
So Norway, 96% of all the cars sold there electric today in 2026, but in 2015, the Norwegian government started putting charging stations every 50 kilometres on every highway. That's called planning for the future.
Okay, a lot of people are concerned, fact or fiction, a lot of people are concerned that lithium batteries are unstable and that they can catch on fire.
Okay.
And that the fires are impossible to put out.
Hang on, Luke, a question for you. There's not as many electric cars as there are petrol cars in Australia at the moment. Have a guess at how more frequently, on a percentage basis, petrol cars catch on fire for whatever reason compared to electric cars worldwide.
You tell me.
No, you have a guess. How much more often do they catch on fire?
I have no idea.
Pick a number. Have a guess. 20 times to 80 times. More frequent. Think about that. So if you've got a whole bunch of electric cars and an identical number of petrol cars, depending on where you are in the world, 20 to 80 times more petrol cars will catch on fire. Do you ever see a petrol car fire on Sky News? No. Do you ever see an electric car fire on Sky News? Yes. And so people have this mental image that electric cars catch on fire all the time. They actually catch on fire 20 to 80 times, not percent, times less. And we're coming up with new designs for the batteries. Then some of the new designs, which are not available but which are being tested, can go from 10% to 80% full in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Love that.
And the battery technology is increasing incredibly quickly. So, okay, here's a question for you, Luke, without notice. You ready for it?
No.
What percentage of the world budget is given as a present for free as a subsidy to the fossil fuel companies?
Oh, so much.
7%. 7% of all the money generated on Earth, which is roughly $100 trillion, is given as a subsidy, both direct and indirect, to the fossil fuel companies. Why? Because they've got lobbyists who say, give us the money, and perhaps the politicians can be influenced.
Yeah, I don't like that.
So 7% of your salary is given for free to a fossil fuel company.
Don't like that.
Hey, listen, Dr. Karl, we had other things to talk about.
We didn't quite
and
get
this
there.
No, but can we ask permission to get you on again in a few weeks?
Love to.
And we didn't get to talk about ChatGPT. Where is it going? Also, next time, I want to talk about hydrogen power.
I love hydrogen power. It has pluses and negatives. Yep.
Hydrogen power, ChatGPT, cosmic radiation when we fly,
And yeah.
You were just telling us that smiling can be contagious.
Yeah.
Why is yawning contagious?
Maybe mirror neurons, maybe not.
Okay, next time.
Yeah, okay.
This is Dr. Karl. It's a periodic tale. It is such a good read. And Dr. Karl, how else can we find you? Tell us about your podcast.
Go to drkarl.com and everything follows off that.
And Dr. Karl, we love you. You know that.
Yes.
We should all love each other because it ends up making a better world for all.